October 7th, 2021. This is a special council meeting. Candy, you want to take the roll quick?
There we go. Caravello.
Here.
Doom.
I didn't
Riley.
see him.
Hiley.
I don't see him.
Hirsch.
She's excused.
Yes. Hunt.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
Lagaki. No. Mayeski.
Here.
Okay. Reeves.
Here.
Okay. Schumacher.
Here.
Pekulski.
Here.
Okay. And Venegas.
Here.
Okay. We have a quorum here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 alders present, and we have 5 not here.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for making it, everybody, on short notice. We do appreciate it. And I know I have another meeting at 6, so we'll try to get through this. Are there any communications from anyone? Hearing none, there's no minutes, there's no public comment, and we're going right into item number 5, which is coming from Stoughton Utilities. Jill, you want to just go with it?
Thank you, Tim. And Matt, please jump in wherever you would like. Could I share a screen just because it's easier to kind of show a picture. And I'm sure there was a picture of this shown. The short of it is this is actually one of the reasons we wanted an ordinance passed related to having a single water service feed multiple parcels. In all our cases we've run into this, we've had public right-of-way to be able to address this issue. But in this case, as you see, 405 actually has a water service that comes into it, feeds 416, 405 page, 416 main page court, 417 main page court, and 426 main page court. Initially, we looked at bringing in water services through here. Still 416 would have needed an easement because right-of-way ends here. With meeting with and working with 5 Star Energy Services, there's that big box culvert there, a variety of AT&T, sanitary sewer, which we'll talk about later, and water main. And just kind of the logistics and dewatering to get underneath that box culvert, they came forward with an idea which would be a cheaper option to come off of Page Street. So at that point, I just reached out to 411 and asked, would you be even willing to consider this? They said, yep, absolutely, we would give an easement to do that. So I started to talk with Matt and his team regarding, how can we make this happen? And they had a number of concerns. And Matt, I don't want to speak for you, so I don't know if you want to highlight those concerns related to kind of joint representation. And so that's why we're looking for council approval for this one particular situation to be able to work with all property owners to get an easement, basically 10-foot easement along the north property line of 411. And then starting at this point down to here, a 10-foot easement on 416. So that would allow 3 new water services to come down to feed 416, 417, and 426 main page court.
Yeah, I'll just add, so these are not easements that would be granted to the city or to Stoughton Utilities. These are agreements between these private property owners so the owner of 411, for example, would grant an easement allowing certain of its neighbors to use its property to put their own private water service laterals in those parcels. And so essentially Jill asked us if we could do the legal work on behalf of these private property owners to prepare these easement agreements. And the conclusion we reached is that we can only do that if the city and each of the property owners enter into a joint representation agreement and waive the conflicts of interest and the confidentiality rules that would normally apply to a lawyer-client relationship. So what you're being asked to consider tonight is whether to approve or a joint representation agreement among the city and these private property owners that would allow us to do the legal work associated with preparing these easements. So there's 2 documents. for the council to consider. One is the joint representation agreement, and the other is the limited scope legal representation agreement. The city would be agreeing to pay all of the legal fees associated with doing the work to get it done. If the city approves these agreements, then Jill will be going to the property owners and asking them to also approve the joint representation agreement, and they'd each have their own individual limited scope representation agreement. She would present those to the owners, and if they are agreeable, they will sign those as well, and then we can have the easements signed, and at that point, finally, the work can be done. And as I understand it, one of the reasons there's a rush here is that the contractor is going to be leaving the site very soon, as early as next Wednesday or Thursday, I believe Jill indicated. So she's trying to get all these agreements approved and executed and the easements executed in order to allow the contractor to get the work done before they leave town within just a matter of days.
Yes, and actually, this is probably the final last line out there. At this point, I believe we can achieve 100% with this moving forward. And I have agreement from all 4 property owners. And actually, if council were to choose to move forward with this, I have meetings. Actually, I have one directly after this meeting to get 417 signed. 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, I've got 426. 2 o'clock tomorrow is 411, and 3 o'clock tomorrow is 417 or 416, excuse me, if council were to choose to move forward with this.
Attorney Dragney, do you recommend we approve each of these items separately then?
Yeah, I would take action on first the joint representation agreement, and second, the limited scope representation agreement. If you have any questions about either, I'll do my best to answer. Again, the work that we would be asked to do is simply prepare the easement agreements. We're making it clear to everyone that if Jill runs into a problem while she's trying to get signatures, if one of the property owners is unwilling to proceed or expresses concerns about how this is being handled, then we would have to step back, frankly, and we wouldn't be able to proceed any further. So the assumption here is that all these property owners are willing to agree to this and are not going to be expecting us to do anything other than just prepare the document.
Excuse me, Matt.
Yes.
Could you run over it one more time what the 2 documents entail?
Yes. So the joint representation agreement is an agreement that includes the city and each of the property owners as parties. And the city and the property owners would be agreeing to all be represented by the same lawyer in preparing these agreements, and would be agreeing that they would waive certain rules that would normally apply, such as client confidentiality, that I would have the right to tell each of the clients what the other people are saying to me. For example, this is the reason we're doing this is that there are certain rules that govern lawyers that make it very difficult for one lawyer to represent more than one party in the same transaction. So we need everyone to agree that we can do that and to understand that we're acting for everyone's interests here in a very limited way. So that's one of the documents. The other document, the limited scope representation agreement, that's where the city is basically saying, yes, we agree to hire you to do this project and we're going to pay you. And it says you're going to pay me at the same rate that you pay me for other legal services in accordance with our existing agreement with the city.
So basically, the city foots the bill for the attorney and pays for the lead service replacement, so they don't have to.
Yes.
Correct. But the grant properties are grant eligible. So the private side will be paid for by the grant. I have reached out to DNR to see if there's any possibility of, paying for any of the legal fees. I suspect not, because the grant is truly for construction, but still pursuing that opportunity if it does exist. And then there will be 3 services on the public side that the utility will pay for.
And the alternative is if they don't do this, they're going to have to probably pay themselves because of the ordinance.
They will actually, all three properties have been noticed and they've authorized the work to proceed to go forward. But if we run into a situation where obviously there's no ability to do this work, they would then have to still do the work because they've been noticed that they have lead, but then that cost would be on them to try to figure out the solution here as well as replacing the water service. So they've got the ordinance that doesn't allow this configuration to occur. And then they also have the fact that they're lead, and so they would be obligated to replace that.
And in my view, if we can't get the problem solved now in the way that Jill is trying to solve the problem, that's going to be a very thorny problem to kind of get it sorted out later. It's going to be a much more difficult, time-consuming, and expensive process for everyone.
I would move to approve the joint representation agreement. This is Lisa.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
And there's a second by Rachel, was it?
Yeah.
All right, any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. All right, then was there a second one?
Yes, the second one is the limited scope representation agreement.
I would move.
I thought that's, I thought that's the one we just did.
Well, Candy, can you, was the motion that was just adopted, was that for the joint representation agreement?
It is, so maybe I'm good with either one, but that's the one that I said was a joint representation agreement.
Both
So
are
that one,
listed,
okay,
both are
so
listed
that
as
was,
on 2021. They're not, there's nothing in there. I'm assuming that will change. Yeah,
maybe it would be easier if, Candy, can you put the joint representation agreement on the screen? So everyone can see what we're what I think they just voted on. Let's make sure everyone understands what they're voting on.
I think you have the screen back, Candy, from Jill.
It should be called consent to joint representation and waiver of confidentiality.
that's it.
Nope. That is not it.
I only showed two
No.
things in my packet.
Well, then maybe, Candy, I sent it to you this morning, I think, or last night, I can't remember.
Last night, if you'd like, I've got them, if that would be helpful, I can pull them up.
Jill, can you pull it up?
I can, I just need control again of the screen if I could. So this is
That's it. So this is the agreement among all the parties allowing for joint representation. My understanding that that's what you all voted on, but if that wasn't in your packet, let's just scroll through it briefly. So stop right there, please. Yeah, this is the key. This is where everyone is allowing us to represent the city and the other parties in this matter. If you want to keep scrolling down. Explains we can only do this as long as there's no conflict. Nobody has a problem with how we're proceeding. Client confidentiality is waived in a certain way, to a certain extent. Paragraph 2, you can see the client agrees to the joint representation and the waiver. Keep going. There you go. And then these are all the parties to this agreement. It's the city and the various property owners. So maybe if people didn't know about that, didn't have that in front of them, maybe we should vote again.
I think I didn't maybe just call it the right thing, but
I have it I have it as page 5. In other words, there's two pieces that are together. There's an eight-page attachment, and I'm on page 5, and that's consent to joint representation and waiver of confidentiality.
Yes,
I
and
know I
that is
read-
the one that in the packet, I think I was
Yeah,
calling a
so-
joint representation. So if did I use the right terminology then? Attorney Gregory?
Well, it depends on, Candy, what does your record, what do the minutes now reflect in terms of what was voted on?
I had Lisa make a motion on the joint representation, so.
Please have the record reflect that the motion was to approve the consent to joint representation and waiver of confidentiality.
That's correct. Thank you.
All right. So then should we go on to the next one?
Yes, and the next one is called the limited scope representation agreement.
All right. And I thought I heard a motion by Schumacher on that one. Was that accurate?
That's right. I'll make the motion for the limited scope representation agreement.
All right. Thank you. And I didn't catch the second. Who seconded that one?
I'll second it.
All right. Alderperson Hunt, thank you. Any explanation or discussion on that one?
It's the same matter. This is just confirming that the city is hiring us to do the work on this, paying for the work that we're doing, including for the other property owners at the rates that we regularly charge the city.
All right. Any questions on this one? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Joe can get to work then.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then I think we just have a motion to adjourn.
No, we have
Oh,
another
I'm sorry.
resolution.
Oh, that's right, I see it. All right, and the resolution is consideration and possible action on declaring that a crushed sewer main creates an emergency in which the public health or welfare of the city is endangered. And so the resolution is coming from utilities as well. Anything you want to add to that, Jill? That's the one on Jefferson Street?
That's correct. So actually in the same location between Page and that's, we became aware of it because part of the lead service line replacement project is that they have to televise the sewer laterals. To do that, they go down, at least initially, go down the main and then lateral launch. They've got the ability to launch into the laterals. In doing so, they came across basically this crushed, it's a 15-inch clay pipe. And in all reality, this may have been like this for 15 years. It may have happened yesterday. There's no real way to know. The concern that I have ultimately with this, because it's supposed to be obviously a round pipe, it is basically in a football shape. And you can see the cracks, kind of along here and here. The joints are pulled apart and they're in back. And then here, you can see here, and there's another cracked piece here and back here. The concern I have is that the area in which this drains, it's a significant service area. And if this were to collapse, basically very quickly, because of the quantity of flow, the quantity of basically all that wastewater coming to this location, that manhole on the top side is very deep, but on the lower end by the bridge is quite shallow. And what we found is that when we were televising, going from that shallow manhole, basically upstream through that pipe, at the first 30 feet looks decent. Then for 30 feet, we know that it looks like this football. And then from there, we don't know. We ran into an obstruction of gravel and different things that we couldn't get by. The pipe is still flowing. And then on the flip side is trying to televise also from the top end, from the 18 super deep. We did run into debris. We did try to flush that by pulling it back, because the concern that we have at this point in time is that based on the condition of the pipe, we don't know the extent of the damage, but we know that we for sure have 30 feet that basically looks like a football. And then because of these obstructions, we would typically flush a sewer like this and be able to clean it out and then televise it. However, flushing is high pressure water and don't want to put that against that pipe if it looks like that configuration on that lower section. Number of issues with this in general. But again, back to the idea of if this collapses, that will actually collapse here. The low point ultimately is here. So that sewer will back up fast. And, you know, quick solution would be to bypass pump. And yep, if we can get a pump in place and then we pump to another section of the sewer and we could theoretically bypass it, but we'd have to know at that point in time that it was broken. And what's going to happen if that were to collapse, we wouldn't know until we get that call out from either sewage coming out the manhole at Main and Page, or we've got sewer starting to back up and basement starting to back up. And so it would happen fast and it would affect a large group of people. And then to get a pump in place and get all the piping in place to be able to bypass that pump or bypass that location would take time. Then we'd really be an emergency repair situation. My concern is leaving this as is. I just am not comfortable. The one I say good thing is there's not a lot of traffic on this, but there is a driveway of apartment buildings. And so this does ultimately get plowed. Freeze thaw conditions over the winter, I'm very nervous to leave it over winter. So, you know, my approach here is it's got to be very collaborative with Public Works because we've got that big box culvert there. And all this fits in a very small corridor. Big box culvert, 500 pair, my understanding is a 500 pair AT&T fiber that runs through there. We've got water main and we also have the sanitary sewer interceptor that runs through there. The intent would be to basically get a contractor and meet with a couple, but very quickly here, walk through what we've got, get an idea as far as price and try to find our lowest, you know, through a kind of negotiation process, try to find our lowest bidder, but also our lowest contractor willing to do the work, because that's the reason for bringing this forward is we really don't have the time to go through the public bidding process to get this work done. The other side of it is we've got to have a contractor who has the potential to possibly replace this entire pipe. The goal would be to replace the broken section, then we could flush it, televise it, and ideally it's in great shape, the rest of the pipe. We've repaired that section that's bad, and then for long-term maintenance, we would look to line that entire section. But as long as we can replace that section that's broken, we will be fine. If we find, though, that upstream section is broken as well and looks like this, we'll need to replace that area as well. And that manhole up by Page off Jefferson there is 18 feet deep. So we need to be able to find a contractor that would be capable to tackle that if that's the situation we run ourselves into.
This is Matt. I'll just add two things. Yeah, so that given that history and the concern, the resolution in the packet is basically giving the council the authority to declare that due to that emergency situation, public bidding is not required. I think, though, that Jill would still bring the contract back to the council for approval before awarding a contract. It's just, we would not go through a public bidding process. Jill, is that consistent with your understanding?
Sure, absolutely. I think the one thing too is we would come back with a CIP amendment. The bad thing with that is we won't actually know the cost until after the fact, because we won't know the true condition of the entire pipe extents until we get through this first 30 feet that actually has this damage to it. But once we actually have a total cost, it unfortunately will be after the fact, but we will do a CIP amendment to reflect those cost changes. We do also in the wastewater budget right now, we're doing some pipeline, plan to do some lining of some clay pipes in other locations. We haven't done that work yet. I was still planning to bid that yet this year, but we do have dollars in that area that we have not yet spent. And I'm going to hold on moving that forward until we have this situation addressed.
Are there any questions about this one?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Alderperson Hunt.
a question for you, Jill. Even though this isn't being submitted to the normal public bidding process, you'd still be able to request more than one estimate?
Absolutely. It might be a time and materials ultimately because they don't know what they're getting themselves into, but yes, we'd be able to at least compare and also then be able to confirm with the contractor that ultimately they could perform the work if we're looking at that 18-foot deep section. This other section that's damaged is actually relatively shallow. 6 to 8 feet is what we estimate. So we don't think that'll be too problematic. And hopefully this is the only part that's damaged. But yes, we'll go through and ask for that. The one good news is we did just bid that water main lowering over on 51 and 138 that we did a budget adjustment for. We did have 7 bidders. So there is definitely interest out there. Does seem like contractors are still looking for work this year. So I think we'll have, I think there's a good opportunity here to get multiple quotes for, again, probably a time and materials approach, but at least there'll be ability to compare that.
Okey-doke.
Any other questions? Anybody willing to make a motion on the resolution?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
I think Alderperson Hunt was the second. One last time for discussion. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. All right, now we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move
So
to adjourn.
Motion by Venegas, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mieski. All right, thanks for everyone for getting here on short notice, including Attorney Dragney. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And any opposed? None opposed. I'll see some of you at the personnel meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all so very much.
Thank
Good evening,
you. Bye.
everyone.
Bye.